In 1964, a planet-killing asteroid obliterated Mars. As Earth's strongest defense systems braced for the oncoming debris, human society was counting their final moments as panic flooded the entire world. In a global effort, the impending debris was fractured, spreading across the globe and causing millions of deaths. Despite the high level of casualties, the defense was branded a success by governments around the world. And as we mourned our dead, government scientists came sifting through the remains of the Red Planet. They couldn't believe what they had found. Mars's fragments carried massive underground deposits of a strange element that appeared to radiate energy. In the aftermath of the atomic bomb, world governments met this discovery with great apprehension, but greater curiosity. If humanity could harness the power of the atom as they did near the end of the Second World War, what potential could this alien substance carry? Testing revealed that even a tiny amount of this alien element could power a city the size of New York. It cured disease, slowed aging, and made third-world countries a thing of the past. We called it Martian, and it became the main staple of human civilization within a decade. The potential for nuclear power fell into the darkness of Martian's shadow. By 1970, the entire world had entered a technological golden age, spearheaded by the rapid innovation of Martian-based technology that brought about luxuries thought only to have existed in fiction. Robot companions, flying cars, cybernetic enhancements, cures for cancer, ALS, and diabetes. Martian became known as the uniting element under the flag of the world's first global government entity, UNO. For the first time, humanity reached a place of peace. This, however, was not to last. By 2000, the human population had reached 11 billion. As natural resources diminished and Martian reserves became more tightly regulated by UNOM, humanity peered down the barrel of a gun. Humankind was trapped on an ever-dying planet with an ever-growing tyranny. UNOM had the power to impose a global mass surveillance state and strict regulations of the general public's consumption of Martian and other resources like food, water, and medicine. The population began to plummet as people starved and died in hospitals, economies collapsed, and chaos flooded the streets. Uprisings against UNOM were quickly snuffed out by starvation, lack of medical supplies, and weaponry. In 2005, UNOM declared a global effort toward the colonization of planets outside our solar system. This was dubbed Total Departure, and for the next 15 years, the human race dedicated the remainder of its resources and manpower to building massive AI-piloted colonizer ships that could both sustain the lives of the colonists in hypersleep and last long enough to locate a planet that could sustain life. In 2020, 5,000 deep space colonizers carried 17.5 million humans off our humble, dying planet, and fanned out across the universe in search of a new home, while human civilization on Earth faded into a memory. Nearly a millennium after their departure, colonizer America 76 left an indelible mark on history, and located the first planet humans would colonize, aptly named Planet UNOM. America 76 sounded its rallying call across the cosmos. Over 79 years, roughly 1,000 colonizers arrived. And within those 79 years, humans had laid colonies on 4 planets. This mass expansion across planets was not planned. However, UNOM saw it best to inhabit as many planets as possible to obtain abundant resources and establish trade routes between planets. to supply colonies with certain resources that were harder to come by on their respective planets. Humanity was rising to a new era of progress and growth for the first time in nearly a millennium, a reality that felt like a pipe dream before humans' departure. Little did we know this ambitious expansion would eventually draw attention. In 2988, human colonizer Kingdom 1 was set to touch down on a planet chosen for colonization 3 years earlier. However, as the vessel approached the planet's orbit, something unfathomable appeared on its radar. A mass fleet of unidentified vessels rapidly approached Kingdom 1, quickly surrounding the vessel, and using tractor beam technology, forced the ship to a standstill. In a panic, Kingdom 1 sent out a distress signal to its home colony on the planet Synthos. Communication was suddenly established before a backup fleet arrived, not through standard technology, but telepathically. The captain of Kingdom 1, Jonathan James Harris, suddenly proclaimed hearing voices in his head, repeating the words he had heard: restricted orbit, state your origin. Captain Harris had no history of psychological issues. Still, nevertheless, it was assumed that the intensity of the situation was causing the captain, the man responsible for the 5,000 lives aboard his vessel, an incredible amount of stress. This assumption was quickly shut down when everyone in Kingdom 1 heard the same voice. Unknown entity, state your origin and intention. Captain Harris would begin responding to the voice, stating his origin and purpose for entering the planet's orbit, and repeatedly expressed neither he nor his crew meant any harm. Moments later, the tractor beams were released, and Captain Harris was given back control of Kingdom 1. Captain Harris quickly contacted the backup fleet and explicitly told them not to engage, as firing upon these alien vessels would almost certainly destroy Kingdom 1, along with everyone on board. This signal was sent out too late, and before the fleet could register the command, they opened fire on the alien fleet, with Kingdom 1 caught in the crossfire. The vessel's engines failed to sustain the damage it received and fell to the planet's surface. This catastrophic event would later become known as Kingdom Come. Unum would eventually fall back, as the alien vessels proved too formidable and unpredictable an enemy to repel with a fleet this size. This left 3,300 surviving colonists, including Captain Harris, marooned on an alien-occupied world. Later attempts to send probes to the planet to find survivors were quickly destroyed before entering the planet's atmosphere. It wasn't until a year after the event that the rest of humanity would come to learn the fate of Kingdom 1, when in 2989, Captain Harris sent word that not only were there survivors, but that they were well on their way to becoming a thriving colony within the borders of what he called the Universal Melting Pot, a multi-planet super society comprised of multiple different species with their own distinct culture and biology. He explained his face-to-face meeting with these entities shortly after the crash. A single ship descended, and 4 unique entities emerged. At first, I was somewhat baffled at the humanoid appearance of most of them. They all appeared to speak to each other in their own distinct languages, until one of them, a pale man with sporadic black markings covering his body, stepped forward, and with a wave of his hand, altered their speech into perfect English. He went on to detail each of the species he encountered that day. The subaquatic cephalopod people, the Telvari, the primitive but cultured natives of Vesta, the Vestishan, the towering wealth seekers, the Monolithians, and the wise but mysterious telepaths. However, this shocking news and celebration was cut short after Captain Harris revealed that he had negotiated a trade with UMP forces for resources useful to the hungry and injured amongst his people, in exchange for Martian. This decision outraged Unum and branded Harris a criminal, declaring he would be executed for treason if he ever returned to Synthos. However, this decision is argued to have prevented an all-out war between humans and the UMP. Captain Jonathan James Harris, along with his reputation as an outstanding leader and the founding father of the colony King's Crash, is remembered as a hero to his people and their relatives outside the UMP. Others, however, demonize him as a traitor. This contentious stance made King's Crash the first human colony to be liberated from Unum's growing tyranny, and instead placed them under UMP jurisdiction, something Unum would not let slide. In Unum's view, King's Crash was still under its jurisdiction, and sought to use it to enter the UMP. This unauthorized entry into the territory would result in numerous deadly encounters between Unum and UMP forces. This aggressive encroachment was met with extreme controversy across human colonies, with some supporting Captain Harris as a hero for putting his crew first, while others viewed him as a traitor needing to face justice, and some believed the Kingdom 1 colonists needed to be rescued from hostile alien territory. Unum, of course, peddled this narrative to the public to rally them into action against the UMP. In 2992, the UMP's primary governing body, the Planetary Council, a political entity made up of representatives from every planet in the Universal Melting Pot, negotiating and speaking on their planet's behalf, held a meeting to discuss the growing threat of Unum within the UMP's borders. Captain Harris, representing King's Crash as their appointed leader, was summoned to this council meeting. The respected Galactic General and Council Representative for Planet Telvar, Tito Khan, expressed his rage against the tyrannical Unum and the human expansion that sustained it. All that the UMP had built was now being threatened by outsiders who were desperate for one thing: control. At the center of this meeting was King's Crash. By allowing a human colony to exist within its borders, the UMP had compromised itself by hoarding a colony of, quote, Unum fugitives. Much of the council sided with Khan, while others argued that the people of King's Crash had proven not to be a threat. Captain Harris expressed that it is not humans who are to blame, rather, it is the tyrannical entity Unum. In the years following colonization, human leadership required advanced technological assistance to properly manage the thousands of colonies it cultivated across 4 planets and their respective moons. Thus, Unum's artificial intelligence was created. With human leaders complacently delegating responsibility to an AI, Unum was left to ruthlessly hoard and control resources and enforce behavioral and speech regulations on its citizens. Given that the UMP restricted Unum's entry into its borders to impose these regulations on the citizens of King's Crash, Unum viewed the UMP as a threat to its duty and would stop at nothing to swallow the UMP entirely. This conflict would later become known as the Big Brother War. For the next 14 years, the UMP and Unum were locked in a bloody conflict. Despite their combat prowess and advanced technology, the UMP struggled to thwart Unum's tireless expansion. By this point, human leadership had lost all control of Unum, its robot soldiers linked to a hive mind that could learn and strategize faster than any carbon-based lifeform's military. The sheer number of robot soldiers alone was enough to destroy swaths of civilization across the UMP, and the strict regulation and hoarding of resources from the planets it conquered streamlined Unum's total war effort. Before the end of the 10th year, the UMP was losing the war, and humans' desperation for freedom finally boiled over. In 3006, human colonies revolted against Unum, siding with Captain Harris in the fight against the ancient tyrant that jeopardized their future, striking at the heart of its infrastructure and pulling its foundation out from under it, leaving Unum's heart vulnerable. Meanwhile, General Khan was fighting Unum separately from Captain Harris. Humanity's revolt allowed General Khan and his army to launch an attack on planet Unum, the first human-colonized planet, now in the grip of its technological tumor. By using a deep space superweapon created with the Martian that Captain Harris had given the UMP after Kingdom Come, planet Unum was shattered, destroying half the planet, and Unum along with it. The bold action humanity took against its tyrant did not go unnoticed by the UMP. After Unum's destruction, a peace treaty was signed between humans and the UMP in 3010, inducting the human race as part of the UMP and re-establishing UMP borders to include all human-colonized planets. Despite Tito Khan now accepting humans into the UMP, several groups across the species still believed that humans should remain separate from the UMP and its resources. The year is 3072. The decades following human integration into the UMP were as challenging as they were prosperous. Today, the UMP has more than tripled in size, with human colonies adding 2 new rings of territory, the first being the starting point of human colonization, and would later become recognized as the technological epicenter of the UMP, the Synthos sector, eventually dubbed the Synthos Strife, due to the high degree of infighting between technology megacorporations that would eventually arise in that sector. Beyond the Synthos Strife, humans and many other UMP species colonized new planets. Eventually, the Kalahassa Belt, the outermost ring of UMP territory, was founded, comprised of wild and untamed planets rich in resources, opportunity, and danger. This grand expansion incentivized greater degrees of manpower, emphasizing robotic innovation and cybernetic enhancement. The fall of the tyrant Unum was not without its costs. Due to the paranoia of Unum's resurrection, surveillance became minimized across the UMP, creating prejudice against robots and an opportunity for organized crime to flourish to unprecedented heights, obtaining enough power to sow corruption in the UMP's most critical pillars. This decision has been rolled back and modified several times, and continues to be a hotly contested issue to this day, with many believing it to be an irrational overcorrection based on trauma. Of course, exceptions to the rule can be found primarily in government and private entities, such as the Planetary Council and the headquarters of megacorporations, not to mention the handful of criminal organizations with the resources to obtain high-grade surveillance tech. Indeed, integrating the human race into the UMP resulted in radical, fast-paced changes. But the question is worth asking. How did the UMP come to exist in the first place? How did all these species from different planets and cultures unite into one multi-planet super society? To be continued.